welcome to Los Fumar Takes. This is our 269th take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, welcoming back one of my favorite guests that I've had on the show. I love talking to this guy. He is absolutely a wealth of knowledge, and I learn something new every single time I talk to him, and every single time I hear him talk to someone else, I learn something. We were talking a little bit before we even launched tonight's show, and I was like, I'm already learning things. This is great. I should have had the record button going, but that's my mistake. But nevertheless, we are starting here. But before we get to introductions, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. That, of course, is our sponsors, and tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate has done it once again. Jonathan and Drew and Pedro Gomez hosted the Liga Privada 10 Selección de Mercado events in Istanbul in Europe during last month's, surrounding last month's Intertobacco show in Dortmund, Germany from September 14th through the 16th. So the company's founder and president, Jonathan Drew, and global and brand ambassador and factory spokesperson, Pedro Gomez, hosted events in 4 countries before and after the trade show to support the cigar's new release. Available only to international markets, Selección de Mercado is handcrafted to highlight the bold characteristics of the specially curated Connecticut Criollo Capa leaf that's grown exclusively for Drew Estate by one farmer in the famed Connecticut River Valley. I have a feeling Connecticut's going to come up later today. The cigar's name is Spanish for market selection. It is inspired by the old practice of selecting wrapper leaves by certain national markets by color. Drew Estate shows only the most beautiful Rosada leaves to highlight Selección de Mercado's bold yet deeply balanced and sophisticated espresso and earthy notes. So if you want to check out the latest and greatest, check out your Drew Diplomat retailer today. And if you are traveling internationally, make sure that you check out one of the proprietors that carries Drew Estate as well for the Selección de Mercado. And welcome, everybody. This is our 269th take. So without further ado, let's get to introductions of our guest of honor this evening, sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today and start living united. Mr. Nick Melillo of Foundation Cigar Company. Nick, how you doing tonight?
Bear, good to be here, man. Now I know why you're so chill before you start the show.
Exactly, man. I got to rub it up.
You bring the energy, man.
Yeah,
you bring the energy. The energy.
I can't tell you the amount of times that I've actually scared people. They weren't like, they didn't like first time guests that don't expect it coming. And so, the hands down the best reaction though, of just one of the classiest people in the industry, but still like one of the best reactions I've ever got. I do something similar when we do, as you know, when we do like the trade show videos where we do interviews at the trade show. You know, my energy level at an introduction is still pretty high, but George Padron, man, like was not prepared for it. And he was he's like, oh man, like, man, I just nearly shit my pants. And like having George Padron say that to you, like I
was like Bear depressed or something.
Like I could hold it. Oh no, not at all, man.
I'm like, what's going on?
Not at all. Like I said,
I hope he's not down.
No, man. Like I said, the weather's been dreary around here. So, and I honestly, you know, this is like getting into old man talk, but I turned 40 this week, and I for whatever reason last night I just did not sleep well. So, but that's all right. It was good. Yeah. You know, I got a nap in this afternoon. Got a couple cups of coffee, so the energy level is back up where it needs to be. So.
I just drank my full cup of espresso, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, let's rock it and roll it. But so Nick, we were talking a little bit about this before we kind of kicked the show off. It was just like we were talking a little bit about I characterize it this way, the microcosm of where premium cigars lands into the pie of tobacco. And you made a really interesting point, and I kind of wanted to share with our audience too, just about how you know, how there's even like the way that we talk about things, like, you know, there's a war against, like, people are like, oh, I only smoke boutique cigars and I only smoke, you know, or the people who smoke big box and stuff. But like your point was that it's essentially all boutique because it's just a small sliver in the entire pie of tobacco.
I think there's different levels to boutique. Let's put it that way. So in the sense of the whole tobacco pie, handmade cigars is boutique in that scope, right? I mean, we're a handmade industry. There's not many left. Mm-hmm. And this goes back a long time. Within that handmade cigars, then you also have different levels of larger companies, families, people from the States starting their own brands. You have different levels. So I don't think it's just black and white all the time. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, I think the
You seem impressed.
I no, well, I said this before, kind of in the introduction. Like I always kind of learn something new when I talk to you, always. Like, because the encyclopedic knowledge that you have of not just like cigars, but just like the tobacco and tobacco in general. I mean, have you, I know Connecticut, Nicaragua, like you've got it down. I mean, do you feel like your knowledge base for like other countries too, like the Dominican and Honduras, is anywhere near your knowledge of those other two spaces, or is it?
No, definitely not. And I say this there because everything is right a matter of time that we were talking about. So I haven't spent my time working with those tobaccos as much. So I wouldn't say, you know, at that level. I don't work with a lot of Dominican leaf, some here and there. My main experience has been with Nicaraguan and Honduran, filler leaves predominantly, and more Nicaraguan than much more than Honduran. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I'm, we'll probably get into this a little bit later when we talk about some of the cigars that will be released this year or have been already since the trade show and everything. But the it was it like I know you fell in love with the country of Nicaragua, and I know you obviously have a deep connection to your home state as well. But when you're blending when you're blending with tobacco, is there a certain thing about Nicaraguan tobacco specifically that like because we all know how you feel about Broadleaf as a wrapper, but like is there something about Nicaraguan tobacco that speaks to you
Yes,
and speaks to your
yes,
palate than the other
yes.
countries?
It's that combination of Connecticut and Nicaragua is a beautiful combination. They just work. They can work very harmoniously together in unique ways.
Mhm.
I mean, you have that richness of the Connecticut broadleaf. It's hardy. It's got thicker veins. It's got heavy leaf. It has some natural sweetness to it. It has body. It has some strength. It's not overwhelming on strength. And then you combine that with Nicaraguan filler tobaccos, which have come such a long, they've always been amazing. And then just add the past 20 plus years of care, of knowledge, of know how, of quality control standards as a whole, as a whole. But then also that it's a unique leaf from working with it. The bottom primings, it's very diverse, the Nicaraguan plant, in strength and body, also from the lower primings to the ligero, to the upper primings. You don't find that in other countries as much. Does that make sense? I'm kind of
Yeah. No,
blabbering.
no, you're not. Second time you said that
So
tonight.
so ligero in Honduras or Dominican, even Cuba, in strength is almost like Nicaraguan Viso. You just don't yield. It doesn't yield the same as it does in the land of lakes and volcanoes, right?
Yeah,
Because
that
of
makes sense.
because of the soil type. So it's amazing for me. That connection is just natural. Coming from Connecticut, you know, growing up around the aroma and loving broadleaf cigars, Connecticut cigars, and then seeing that, over the past 20 years, kind of, married together has been, I think they work well.
It's
I'm
so
blabbering.
it's so unbelievable.
Tyler
No, you are
Jeffries
not.
in the house.
You are not
Uh-oh.
blabbering. It's so amazing to me. Like we were talking about time because I said like next month this podcast will be celebrating 6 years. And the first time I had you on, like, 6 years ago, I mean, Foundation was a relatively newer company. When I first had you on the show, you were still like building a lot of things, but it's 20 years ago.
we're still building, man. We're still
I know.
building. It just doesn't stop. You know,
20 years
we're not
ago.
we're not building a building. We're building a pyramid. It's it's got a 13-acre base.
Yeah, the foundation, right? The whole thing, the whole it's the
Yeah,
full circle to the name. The
yeah,
but 20 years ago, like Nicaraguan tobacco or Nicaraguan cigar manufacturing, isn't what it is today, and that just seems like to most people who've gotten into cigars even in the last 5 or even 10 years, that probably sounds mind blowing to them.
yeah. Listen, you had, really, begin in the 60s. Then you had war in the 80s, land taken, buildings taken. And then you had a new government in 1990.
Hmm.
And then things started to build kind of from there. But then you had a hurricane in 98. So then the industry got whopped again. And then it slowly, has grown from really the late 90s, like 98, 99. I was talking about this with someone a couple of days ago. What cigars were from Nicaragua in the 90s? And you had Mi Cubana,
Hmm.
you had La Finca, you had, of course, Padron, which just started really, I think, from, my learning of them in like 95, 96, I want to say. Um, and, but you did have a lot of Dominican cigars, I think, using Nicaraguan tobacco, which started to make sense when I moved to Nicaragua, kind of seeing how much tobacco was going, to the Dominican and to Honduras. So that was interesting early on to see, you know, a lot of where some of that strength levels were coming from, I think, from some of the Dominican, not all of them, um, but, some of them. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I mean, because we talked about like how you start your history and how you started, like, and you worked in during the boom, which, 3/4 of the humidor was just trash, for the most part. Like quality of cigars, quality of tobacco and
When
everything.
was this?
Like during the
When was this?
boom.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, during the boom. Like the night,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so but even like when I got into cigars 20 or now 20 plus years ago, God bless, my 18th birthday. Like I would walk into humidors too, and like, they're like none of those brands, like I remember smoking some stuff early on that I actually really enjoyed, that they're just not around anymore. Some of them are,
Yeah.
but
And
like
a lot of them went.
a lot of them, went by the wayside and
A lot
everything.
of them went, man.
So, but
A lot of them went.
oh, we
So
got
wait a
some of
second. What year did you start smoking?
my 18th birthday, so that would be 2002.
Okay. And what did you start smoking when you first started?
My first cigar was a Fonseca, actually. So
Okay.
I had a
Ten
good
ten
starting
two
point.
two. What size? Do you remember?
I don't know because my brother purchased them illegally from a cigar shop. my
Oh,
younger
they were
bro
Cuban.
my younger brother.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, they were Cuban. I had a box of Fonseca 1010 at my high school graduation party.
no, these were
That was
the
my that.
Fonsecas manufactured by the Quesadas. They weren't when I say
Oh, they
illegally,
were.
he
Okay.
was under the age of 18 and he purchased them. That's what I meant by illegal.
Oh, got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Yeah, I remember smoking Fonseca in 96. You couldn't get Maduros, almost impossible to get.
Hmm.
They would come in once in a while. And the 1010s, I'm more than positive they were using shade from the valley, and they came in, non-cello, and they were tasty, man. They were excellent smokes. They used to have an awesome torpedo too, or like a pyramid. Um, Yeah, Pepin started making Fonseca now. I haven't tried it yet. I really want to try that.
I really like their expression of it, their interpretation of it, and it doesn't there's a lot about Pepin's blending that there's kind of like a signature to it. Like it
Yeah,
to me, there a lot of his blends have something. This is something incredibly unique. I do like I can't remember what size that is. It's the Cedros though. It's the cedar wrapped one. That's my favorite.
yeah,
Um,
nice.
that I like that I enjoy of it. So, but speaking of cigars,
So,
what are you
Yeah.
smoking? And
It's
then I have a choice for you tonight. You're actually going to pick my cigar for me. So
all right. I'd do that for you. I'm smoking the new Charter Oak Pegnataro for my grandpa tonight. It's a chilly Sunday. I'm having a little Willits for him
nice.
and one of his cigars. So yeah, it's a nice Connecticut, man. I got to tell you, I got to get you some.
Well,
I'm gonna get you some.
that's actually one of
I
my
should have been
choices
ready
tonight.
for this interview.
No,
What
it's
do you
okay.
got?
I have four cigars for you to choose from tonight. So I have, um, of course, the high class Senator.
Ooh, ooh,
I do have a Charter Oak Pegnataro.
ooh.
I have an Olmec Claro. This is from the original box I purchased when the original release. Like, so they arrived at the store. I bought it blind,
That's the first one.
and it's
Nice.
yeah, from the first box. So it's aged over a year. And then and this is another cigar with some age to it. This is the 5-year anniversary. Oh, wait one second.
Nice. Listen, I mean, what are you feeling tonight? Have you been smoking all day? Have you not been smoking? Did you
I
eat?
I haven't been smoking. I've definitely eaten today. So yeah, I mean I'm prepared for anything.
I would like you to smoke the Pegnataro, the
Okay.
Charter Oak.
Sounds good. Let's
Yeah,
do it. These are shipping right now, so
yeah,
it makes the most sense.
they are. Um, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard some really good just from some of the feedback that from the cigars at this trade show. I know your our previous discussions about trade slash samples. I know you're not wild about it. But a lot of people were really digging this though. Coming off the trade show floor and everything, and Connecticut shade particularly, in Vegas just sucks. So you gotta put some
yeah,
humidity on it. But
yeah,
they were holding up apparently. So good job.
yeah. Vegas. I always say to hold them, man. It's the worst possible place to test new blends. I, I mean, to ship them, but 10% moisture content is not the greatest for smoking cigars.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
I
And that
consistently,
warehouse.
yes, and consistently, like year over year. I mean, other people have said it to me, but like you say it to me consistently each year. Like here, here's some cigars, but don't smoke them.
Yeah. Yeah. Take them.
Take them.
Take them back home. Bring them to humidity. Bring them to their rightful home. Yeah. So, I definitely, personally smoke darker cigars, right? I do enjoy Connecticut Shade because I often would smoke Connecticut Shade with my grandfather,
Hmm.
whose name is Tony Pegnataro. Um, and he loved Connecticut Shade, but he also loved flavor. And, that was the key, some flavor. So I think it's a unique one. I mean,
Hmm.
predominantly it's all Nicaraguan, um,
You get
the
that.
filler and the binder.
Yeah, there's some pop to that right off the get. Like if I didn't know the story and I didn't know this is Connecticut shade, it's a little bit darker of a hue too. I mean, is that just happened to be the cigar I got? Um, or
Yeah, there's going to be
consistently?
there's a range in shade, but we're trying to do the heavier bear on the Connecticut shade because again, I try to stay away from the super lower primings, especially of Connecticut shade because it's already so thin.
Hmm.
So when you're in different climates, it's the lower primings can split much easier. So generally, I'm trying to get a little bit darker just for the body of the leaf, so it doesn't split. But that also helps with the filler and the binder because there's definitely, again, it's not all Seiko, the blend. It's not all, super mild uh, filler leaves at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like the first impression of it, just the light and everything. And every time I light a cigar, Nick, especially particularly when I smoke with you, um, I'm always conscious of this. Because I've heard you preach out because I know it's your big pet peeve about where to place the flame when you're lighting the cigar. And I know we've had this conversation on the show before, but like the amount of times, like ever since you said that to me the first time, the amount of times that I see people lighting cigars and just sticking that blue flame like right on the tobacco, like I'm just like, oh, thank God Nick's not here.
Listen, everybody do what you got to do, right? I mean, it's all about enjoyment. But if I'm asked my opinion on how to light a cigar, you're talking about 2,800 degrees or higher in a
Right.
blue. That's like a Bunsen burner. So a soft flame is 800 degrees. That is a huge difference. And
Hmm.
I think definitely for, again, to test the blends were created to be at a steady, constant, combustion rate. If you start puffing too heavy on them, the blend is going to taste differently than what it's intended to be. So I think just sometimes, that blue flame, how much does it affect flavor? I don't know. Not something I recommend
Yeah,
if you
definitely.
don't have to, but do what you got to do.
Well, I think like
Everybody do what they need to do.
I lit mine with a Zycar soft flame, and like even
Yeah.
then, like I had the flame relatively pretty low. I mean, it does the trick. Like like you said, 800 degrees on the softest part of it. I mean, it gets.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
technically you're supposed to pull the soft flame up into the cigar,
mhm.
also you're not supposed to have that directly in contact with it as much, because if you light it properly you can keep the flame just below it and pull the flame up,
Right.
um and just take it nice and steady. you know
Yeah.
it's all of these things. That's the amazing thing, Bear. From seed to the finished product and storing the product, temperature and humidity play such drastic roles, you know in the cigar. And it affects it. I mean, Vegas at 10% moisture content. You leave the cigar on the out for 10 minutes, it's already starting to dehydrate.
Yeah.
And
That's
then you
crazy.
smoke that thing. We are shipping things out of Nicaragua around 12.5% moisture content. This is why cigars sometimes they're not they have to leave at a certain moisture content in order to be enjoyed. If you start going down to 10% moisture content and you start sucking out the moisture content from the cigar and that dips to 10, and then around that and below that, it's going to be way too dry. And especially if you have heavier leaves, Viso, Ligero, when those get dry and then their fire is applied to them, they burn hot.
Hmm. And then that throws off the entire blend. I mean, at that point, so we're
100%. Then you got to take it slow. Take it
all
slow.
right. Well, we're already knee deep into this, and we're going to be talking about this Charter Oak Pegnataro here just momentarily. So let's go ahead and launch tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by people. Yes, cigar people, the people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is, but behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Phoebe Cousins. Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work have been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. So, Nick, we obviously lit up the Pegnataro for the latest release under the Charter Oak brand. There was also an additional one called the Pasquale. But let's talk a little bit more about the history of the Pegnataro. So you were talking about your grandfather Tony Pegg. Who was it? Him that founded the grocery stores, or was it a generation before that?
It was his father. So my great grandfather actually came to Little Italy in New Haven, and I think he was around 15 and started working, pushing a vegetable cart around, selling vegetables. Eventually, as I learned the story, people would show up at his warehouse where he would restock, his cart. And then he said, well, let me open up a store. And then I think from, after the war, until the 80s, he ended up having about 7 different supermarkets throughout New Haven.
Oh wow.
So he was, yeah, I remember him when I was probably about 6 years old. He used to drive me around. So that's Tony Pegg's father. But my grandfather was like the face of the store.
Mm.
And he smoked a pipe almost daily. He always had a pipe in his mouth, but then he always liked to smoke cigars, at night and on the weekend.
I remember you telling me he was a big pipe smoker too, but enjoyed the cigar. So, do Pegnataro stores still exist, or did he sell them, or did the family sell them, or what?
Yeah, they sold them. The family sold them in the late 80s, and then he eventually retired and then became a sheriff in New Haven.
Oh,
Yeah,
shut up. That's cool.
at the federal court, and yeah, he. So I got to smoke a lot of cigars with him, which is really special. He passed away in 2020. He was 95.
Yeah.
Yeah, just about
It's
to turn 95. Yeah.
it was a rich life that he lived. That's crazy. It's
Yeah, Tony Pegg's the man. He was a big band jazz drummer.
Shut up.
And oh yeah.
What is it with the cigar industry and drummers, man? Everyone's like, there's a lot of musicians, a lot of drummers in this industry.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, he played drums his whole life. New Haven has a big jazz scene and a lot of music, on the greens
Mhm.
and whatnot in the
Yeah.
summertime. Um, yeah, he did that, I think, before the war, after the war in jazz, but he fought in Okinawa, made it
Yeah.
through, and yeah, he's an incredible man.
I
So I had to do a smoke in his honor.
I was wondering when you were going to get around to it, Nick, because you started talking a lot more about him, I think more publicly, obviously after his death, unfortunately in 2020. But I mean, I remember some of our initial conversations when we met in the cigar shop, and those memories were so rich for you, and even private conversations. So I always wondered if you were going to do something to honor him, um, and the family, because I know that the Charter Oak is always because I mean, there's so many. We talked about this last time. There's so many stories that you tell. They're all interconnected, with your brands,
True.
but the Charter Oak I've always felt has been that representation of your roots, your family, your history. And so I think it's obviously
Yeah.
very appropriate that the Pegnataro is under the Charter Oak line.
Yeah. Yeah. Because this would have been their brand,
Right.
both of them.
Well, yeah, because
Like
this
that's why
is
Charter Oak.
smoked.
Charter Oak was really made for them initially.
Mhm.
You know. Yeah. Behind the scenes, like that was the creation of that brand, was to make because they both smoked Connecticut cigars. Like that's what you smoked. Um, you smoked a lot of Connecticut brands that existed. So yeah,
So
Charter
the
Oak was one
what
for them. This is a I say this is these blends. These two special blends are completely different from the rest of the core lines. They're completely different blends. I say the core line is what they would smoke every day, whereas this is something they'd smoke on the weekend or a special occasion,
right.
um, something different. So, I mean, the Charter Oak Connecticut is more mild. They're a completely different blend,
A little creamier.
than this Connecticut share.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This has got more strength to it.
Definitely got more giddy up. I'm really enjoying it so far. Well, I think it's interesting. You said so. So Tony survived. He was in the Pacific Theater, so he was in Okinawa. He survived there. So your grandfather Pasquale, which of course the other line is named after, um, he he was also in World War II, if I'm not mistaken. There's a photo that I believe that you published that you'd found of him manning a anti-aircraft gun.
Yeah. Yes, he was an anti-aircraft gunner in the army and fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and made it through
Wow.
that. And I actually do have his whole war photo album. It's about this thick, um, of just incredible photographs. I'm trying to eventually, I think it's going to be donated to the World War II Museum.
Oh, nice.
Um, but it's incredible. It's it's got pictures all over Europe and some pretty horrific pictures
Hmm.
in there from the war. But I never got to talk to him about it because he passed away when I was 15. Um, and then I inherited it from my father in in an old trunk that my great grandfather had, brought from Italy a long time ago. So I've had this album and have all these pictures, and yeah,
That's so
I
cool.
think so. Yeah, what it would have been like to go through it with him, and but he was a avid Connecticut broadleaf extra oscuro. That was that was Pasquale. He loved a particular brand called Topstone. Also, FD Grave, but they were always extra oscuro. And we used to roll with him, go to Mr. Steak. People used to sell cigars all over the place at that time in Connecticut. So they used to have Mr. Steak used to have cigars by the register, and he'd always get his broadleaf extra oscuros and get us the bubblegum cigars, me and my brother, and we'd walk out of there like $1 million. Uh, but that he liked that really dark, rich, Connecticut broadleaf. So the Pasquale's made for him. Also got more body, more strength. I think more depth and complexity than kind of the core line. What you get from the core line is amazing.
Right.
It's a beautiful story. It's just you're not getting the range, because they're more meant to be in that mild to medium range where I would put these, medium plus on the medium plus side. Again, depending on who's smoking them.
And so this is you said in the album, I just want to go back to the history of your
Yeah,
grandfather
yeah,
there.
sure.
You also found some letters where he actually was asking his family to send these particular cigars that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I have, and I always forget the name. They're like photo, they're like, how do I explain this? They're messages, they're letters, but they're printed on some sort of paper.
Mm,
And I have tons of them. And they're like army correspondence, but they're like, um, it's not the actual letters. They're like pictures of the letters or something. I don't know what this is
interesting.
called. I look like a total fool, but long story short, I have these transcriptions, these letters from family, from him, and requesting things to send to him, and cigars are on the list.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's I mean it's so cool to see like your family's history in kind of black and white like that. And again how it's kind of come full circle for you. Like you know, this was cigars were a lot more commonplace. Again, smoking was more commonplace, but cigars were more commonplace, 100 years ago. And
Listen, man, these, once you have the invention of the cigarette, the high volume cigarette machine, right? You're talking about, I want to say in 1915, 1920. And then you have the war, and these guys sent cigarettes in the care packages to the troops.
mhm,
So I think I was watching the J.C. Newman documentary, and one of the Newmans was saying they all came back, everybody came back cigarette smokers
mhm.
after the war because they were sending them to all the troops. But
Well, yeah, and
yeah, I mean, early
5 cent
1900s, the
cigar or a
number.
5 cent pack of
Yeah.
cigarettes, or it's just economics too.
Yeah. And then once you start inhaling into the lungs, you your body gets accustomed to it
Yeah, exactly. Um,
a little more so. Yeah, war telegram. Somebody's saying online. I'm seeing here quick.
Yeah, war telegrams or mimeograph is what Jay said.
Mimeograph.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to research this now.
interesting. So,
I should know it.
so just again to get back to the roots of again Charter Oak being that representation of your family. I was curious if you've ever thought about kind of dabbling into the again, you've gotten really rich into Jamaican history and obviously Ethiopia and Egypt with the Hiker Castle, England. So you again, it's all interconnected, but like you have these different stories. Have you ever I- have you ever thought about diving into, your Italian heritage and maybe dabbling with like the way that they manufacture cigars in Italy, like Toscanos and things like that? Have you ever thought about exploring that avenue? Because I know you're a nerd at heart.
Have
We
I
were talking
thought?
about this before the show. We were both
Have I
nerds,
thought about it?
Yeah.
Have I thought about it? Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah.
I'd love to see your interpretation
There's
of it.
so many there's so many potential products there, you know?
Oh, I know it's all up there and
But
it's all a whirlwind. So I'm not trying to.
yeah.
I'm really not trying to find anything that you're not willing to talk about. It was just something that came to
No,
mind
no,
for
not at
me.
all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, it's, again, something I don't have much experience in is how
Hmm.
the Toscanas are made and rolled. I know some of the tobaccos working with them, like Kentucky Fire Cured tobaccos.
Of course.
Um, but yeah, um, I'd always love to like create kind of a smaller kind of style cigar, because sometimes I like, you know, a much smaller ring gauge, maybe, cigarillo style smoke.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of, doing it and doing it right and, making it so it's to my liking.
Hmm. Like I said, I would love to see your interpretation with it, just because I've really liked the way that you've explored certain tobaccos and the blends that you've put together. Um, so kind of going into that, with the Matapa, which is actually available now. So the Charter Oak, Pegnataro, and Pasquale are shipping now, earlier this week,
Correct.
and
Correct.
Matapa is available at select retailers now as well. So
Correct.
this is an entirely different department of the story, everything. So uh, I know you and I spoke about
Yeah.
it obviously at the trade show, but just for those who may not understand the significance and where that comes from, let's talk a little bit about the story behind Matapa.
Yeah. So, Matapa, the image on the band is of Ruben Dario. Ruben Dario is one of the most important Spanish poets and also Nicaraguan national hero. Early 1900s, he sort of transformed Spanish poetry with something called modernism. Um, this is very important, especially within Nicaragua. I've heard Nicaragua referred to as the land of rebels and poets. Uh, Poetry is very much, a part of the soul of the country. And again, Ruben Dario is one of those figures. I think no matter what side of the aisle you're coming from in Nicaragua, he's seen as distinctly Nicaraguan. And this image always kind of had some it reminisced as sort of similar to that Bolivar band. There was something about it that I kind of thought of. I just always saw him on a band. Um, and Matapa is the result of that. Matapa is where he was born in Nicaragua. It's south of Esteli. It's now known as the city of Dario, Ciudad de Dario. It was named in his honor. But the Matapa plant was in many of his poems what was seen within the indigenous cultures in Central America as a symbol of the tree of life.
Mhm.
It's a type of agave plant, actually. So that is when you open the box, you'll see it on the cedar. Um, we kind of place the story on the cedar in the inside of the box with the actual plant. Um, so it's something I've always kind of admired is this imagery. And the band, we found some amazing bands from the 1800s um, to use as some inspiration for this band.
Okay.
And yeah, so I've never used Sumatra Ecuador on a blend that's gone to market. I've used it, have been a fan of it for many years, but that's one wrapper I was yet to really create a blend around. Um, and I think it's very unique to Sumatra Ecuador in itself. It's, from my knowledge, seed from Sumatra that was brought to Ecuador late 1800s. And to me, it's not, it's got some of this smokiness I get from it. And if you're not too careful, some of the upper primings, to me, it can lean a bit on the bitter side. So the binder is crucial in the Connecticut broadleaf binder suite. It kind of rounds that out. And then you have some of the richest, filler. It's mainly Viso and Ligero. There's one Seiko in the blend. And I think it's got some kick to it. It's got some kick to it.
I was really excited about
You
this.
know, I say kick, but that's relative to a lot of people. For it's got kick in the sense that it's using a lot of heavy Viso and Ligero leaves. But again, I think the binder wrapper combination kind of brings it all together, so it's not all aggressive on your palate. For a milder smoker, it would be a lot. But because it is working together, you don't feel the strength as much on your palate, but you can feel it. It could catch up to you sometimes.
There's interesting. It's interesting how blends kind of can affect people in different ways. Like even milder, there's certain mild cigars. Like there's that one cigar that's like everyone's like kryptonite. I don't know what it is about. I've said this before on the show. Believe it, the OG Excalibur, Hoya de Monterey Excalibur, the Claro, not even the Maduro, the Claro. I can smoke the Maduro just fine, or the Dark Knight. The Claro, for whatever reason, just like hits my palate in this weird way where I'm just like, it really kind of, I don't know what it is. But yeah, I get really kind of, I don't even get buzzed on cigars anymore. That cigar still will kind of hit me weird. It's so bizarre. I mean, it's it's a great cigar. I just like, it's so weird because it's a it's a lighter cigar, and it's just weird how
Which
it
one is
does it.
this? The Hoya de Monterrey? Which one?
Excalibur, the Claro.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
number. Which one?
the number
Number
one.
three.
Number one.
Number one. That's a
Yeah.
double Corona, no?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. The Claros. I started on that cigar,
Yeah.
not first in like '95. I used to smoke the threes all the time, but I haven't smoked one of those in a long time.
Yeah. They're still
It's
good.
got
I
some
still
kick,
like, for me it does. I mean, everyone might be laughing
really.
at me, but for whatever reason, it just hits me weird. I
No,
can do the
man.
Maduros just fine.
Listen, this everybody gets affected differently.
Hmm.
That's why it is kind of relative. But yeah, it's interesting to see how people perceive them, and you hear from different people. What did you think this new blend was? And some people think it's heavy, other people's light. So it's always interesting to see people's palates.
For sure. Jay
Question
Davis,
is, do you like it? Do you
yeah.
like it?
Jay Davis says he agrees though about the kick with the Matapa, but he also says it has an elegance and a balance and refinement to it as well. So some high praise.
That was the goal, Jay. What up, Jay? How you doing, man? That was the goal, Jay. And I think that's the challenge, is to get that everything to work together, so it's not jading the palate in any way. But again, I wouldn't give it to somebody that's newer smoker on an empty stomach, at 6 a.m. Not advisable.
Outside of the outside of the, I guess, the Charter Oak, Connecticut, and I guess now the Pegnataro, there's probably the Matapa sounds like it's probably one of the lighter cigars that you make, or lightest in body and strength.
I don't know, man. Matapa? I think the Matapa Maduro's got some. It's got some kick to it.
Got some kick. Yeah, I smoked
Yeah,
it too. I
Toro
thought.
Maduros.
Mhm.
I think the Claros again completely, brings a different flavor profile to the tobaccos. The blend. To me, it does have more of that smokiness to it, and the Claros, whereas the Maduro is, got a little bit more of that sweet kind of raisiny kind of feel.
Mhm. I know we're big coffee drinkers with our cigars. You and I both are
Yes,
this.
I just
I've that was a great pairing. I personally love, one of my favorites is the smoking a Huehuense Guapo with coffee. It's just that hits every time. Every time. Such a great pairing. Um but to go back to the story of Matapa and the audio, the um I find it, again, to not to be too on the nose with it, I find it to be incredibly poetic how you choose to honor the people of Nicaragua with your brands and you're very intentional with all your branding, and this is one of the things that I love about you, Nick, is like it's so much more deeper than just naming a cigar to name it. Like there's a whole intention, very, like, everything is very well thought out, very purposeful, very meaningful. Here's the reason why. But going back to Say, the wise man, etc., like, you choose to honor the people of Nicaragua. Even with this one that's got a person on it, you're paying homage to poetry and what that means to the people of Nicaragua as well as cigars. So I think that's interesting that you choose to do
yeah.
that.
Listen, my art director's my good friend Alex Garcia. He's from Esteli. He's goes hand in hand with just my experience in Nicaragua because I've known him, since I got there. And when we're working on stuff together and we see it, we want to do it honor and justice, and it is to pay homage um, to the history. And I think it's important for people to learn about because we don't get exposed to Nicaragua. We kind of hear about it in the news, you know, um, but people don't know. I knew Wawense. Obviously, people were not going to be able to pronounce it, right? But the people who did pronounce it there, right, is the
We've
people who wanted to learn the story
hmm
and learn why did I call my first project something that no one could pronounce,
we've
because
had this
it was
discussion, yeah.
important. It was very important, that word for people to know. I never knew about it before moving down there. I didn't know the history, and all I had was a negative kind of image of what was going on politically and whatnot, but I knew nothing about the culture. um so that's the intent of it. For me, again, on creating blends. So what am I going to brand? Am I going to try to do go to a marketing, company and have a makeup, a brand and do it that way? No, I'm using it as a vehicle to express things that I've been passionate about, just as passionate about cigars in many ways,
hmm
and to me, they complement each other.
Yeah. Y-
And I hope that people get them and enjoy them, and they can take them. Some people don't want to hear anything about the band or the any of that. It's about the cigar. That's where we start. Is the tobacco, is the cigar, is the blend. But you can take it to different levels if you want to.
Well, you bring us into your world, Dick, which is that's what I really appreciate about it. Like, honestly, I I thoroughly enjoy most of your cigars. I mean, they're some of my favorites. They're in my daily rotation, what have you. And I mean, I just talked about the Wednesday and coffee. I mean, like they're a part of what I enjoy about smoking. I mean, that goes without saying. For me, as a storyteller and a person who appreciates conversation and enjoys our conversation specifically, I almost get more excited about understanding the story behind like your choices and your new releases as I do about the cigar itself. Like I'm like, it's almost like the cigar is going to be good. It's kind of like, it's almost like it's a given at this point for me because I just enjoy your interpretation with tobacco and your palate. Like I think we're aligned in a lot of ways, but I almost get more excited about the story about it because I just know, again, just the intent that you put behind everything, which is just
Yeah.
really beautiful. And again, not to be too on the nose, but very
Thanks, man.
poetic about it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's this cigar art, is pretty amazing. I mean, sometimes I don't think it's people really appreciate it. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes when it gets, there's so much that goes into everything, and then they kind of, sometimes there's a lot that goes into it. When you see that box on the shelf, I
Mhm.
don't want to start complaining. I don't
Yeah,
want to start. I don't want to start sounding bitter.
people
But
ripping
it's
off
it's a
tops of
work.
boxes.
It
Yeah, I
is.
gotcha.
It's a lot. It looks so simple when It's interesting seeing the project. Start a project from nothing and then see it come to fruition and come into into manifestation and then be shipped and go out. It's interesting because it's almost like magic sometimes that it seems like it arrives on this side of the lands here. I'm blabbling bear here.
No,
It's late. I think I'm fading out.
you're
But you know
good.
what I mean? It's a lot. It looks so simple, even in simple boxes or simple bands. It's the amount of work that goes in just to that, not even considering, what's going in on the tobacco side
Right.
is amazing.
Right. So
Yeah,
there's
and there's a lot of just levels of detail
sure.
involved in that, if you
Oh,
could
absolutely.
imagine.
So so there was another release, but I want to tie that into the back end of our next segment, which we kind of launch our fun segments here. But there's one other thing that I want to talk about from the trade show. It connects to another thing that we do at the show on a weekly basis. So it'll all make sense here in just a second. But let's go ahead and kick off our presidential trivia segment, which is always brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. Now, I was putting something together for you tonight, Nick. It's multiple choice still, but I think this may be the easiest, especially since you're such a scholar of so many things, including your home state. This might be pretty easy. So while
No,
associated with,
this is going to be bad. Bear, don't put me on the spot here, man.
I
This is
think you
going to
got
be
this one.
bad.
I think you got this one. While
All right.
associated with
I don't know,
Texas,
man.
While associated with Texas, President George W. Bush was actually born in Connecticut in this city. A, Bridgeport, B, Norwalk, C, Greenwich, D, Danbury, or E, New Haven. Where was George W. Bush born in Connecticut?
Where was he born?
Bridgeport,
I'm going to go with
Milwaukee.
New. I'm going to go with New Haven.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
See, you had it.
I was going to say that, or it was Greenwich.
Yeah, he was born. Yeah, he was born in New Haven. So, where were you born, Nick? Were you born in New Haven as well?
New, New Haven.
Oh, okay. See,
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Greatness alike, man. U.S. President Nick Melillo, born in the same city. There you go. Perfect. Um, this is just a little side, but
You know,
I was looking at something too. It just kind of blows my mind when you think about, like, I look at weird shit like populations and stuff. Where here's a bonus question, just see if you happen to know this doesn't work. I don't just does New Haven rank first, second, or third in population according to the 2008 2020 consensus?
Does it rate number one in population?
First, second, or third in population according to the 2020 census. New Haven in Connecticut.
First.
Bridgeport actually beats it by a little bit. I was surprised by that. I
Wow.
thought New Haven had it. Like I was like when I saw it,
Wow.
and we're not even talking about like I saw the numbers on this, Nick. I mean, the town I live in now is really tiny, but the metroplex itself is like 7 million people. DFW area, 7 million people. New Haven has a population of 189,000 people, and that just seems really low to me. Like, and it's the second
Yeah,
most
that's
populous city.
interesting. Yeah, Bridgeport's been growing. I think there's a lot of kind of reconstruction going on because it was all old factories, man. That was that was actually where the Topstone cigar factory was in Bridgeport
Oh wow. Okay.
for the longest time. Yeah. Yeah.
And you've since moved the headquarters back to New Haven, is that correct?
No, we're actually in Ellington, which is north of New Haven in the
Okay.
Connecticut River Valley.
Okay.
So we're on Dunn and Foster Farm. It's a 300-acre farm. Um, right if you go directly east of the airport, Bradley International,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like 15, 20 minutes to the east
Okay.
across the river. Yeah.
So we were talking. I wanted to ask this about when it comes to your home state, and obviously you have deep connections to the Connecticut River Valley, um, deep connections to your home state. You know, a lot of cigar manufacturers and brand owners have been growing. There's growing concern over the availability of genuine U.S. Connecticut broadleaf. Right? There's been a lot of discussion around this, but you've sent like I mean you continue to manufacture cigars and in fact grow your portfolio like the Pasquale, for example, with the wrapper, and it's one of your favorites, so it's no mistake why it is. But like, is the shortage something that you're concerned about, or you have your again, not to be too on the nose, you have your foundation in place and you're able to secure the tobacco that you need?
This is probably one of the issues that stresses me out the most. There's not enough Connecticut broadleaf.
Mm,
The past 5 years have been plagued with not the right weather conditions. This year was no different, unfortunately. The rain kept coming this year. A lot of it is 5 years has been because of rain. 2 years ago, it didn't rain enough. It actually
mm,
rained way too little. It was more of a drought, which is also not good. So overall, the yields coming out of the valley have been much lower, and then you deal with a rising demand, right? Fortunately for us, Tabernacle, the broadleaf, the Havana seed, people want them.
mm,
Unfortunately, I can't get enough constantly to the market because of just basic yields, right?
yeah.
It was the year before, 2 years ago, 20% of the crop came out of
Wow.
all of it. And then you have a growing mass market.
Hmm.
You have the legalization of cannabis. The blunt market has been growing. The demand for natural leaf has been growing. So you have that whole element, which the mass market consumes a lot of Connecticut broadleaf also. So because of these two factors, we have a very limited amount there. You got to also think too is the planning. We're planning 2 years out from fermentation, so you have to plan and then see where the next crop, we need to see yields from this crop, then to adjust our production properly so we're not completely out, right? 2 years ago, we were out of Tabernacle Havana seed 142 for 4 months
Oh
because the
wow.
fermentation piles that were in there for 2.5 years weren't ready yet.
'Wow. Oh,
Okay.
man.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot. that goes into the planning, and then on the investment side, and then so this is what we're dealing with, and I love your feedback on this also. So this is the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can only make so many sticks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm just getting from the yield of the crop. This is just basic mathematics. So then you have a growing brand. So then how do you allocate product properly? You understand?
Yeah.
This becomes another challenge of, okay, do you, you have a guy that's a regular customer, you've known him for 5 years. He's waiting for the new drop. You're only going to get 2 boxes in the store. Are you going to save them for him, or are you going to sell those 2 boxes to some random guy that comes off the street?
I'm going to sell it to
You're
my
probably
guy.
going to save them. You're going
Yeah.
to sell them to your guy.
Yeah.
So
1,000%.
that happens on the store level, right?
Right.
You're allocating in a sense. Then I can't, from a crop standpoint, just go in and buy all the Ligero. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
You got to buy the Seiko, the Viso, and the Ligero. So it's the same way with like distribution for sticks. That this is why Tabernacle sometimes is difficult to find.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this broadleaf situation. So yes, that was the long answer. It is concerning.
It is concerning.
It's concerning. What we do get, again, it has to meet certain quality control standards.
Of course.
So in order to meet those certain quality control standards, it's a different situation. Whereas, the mass market, they cut in between the veins. They got different yields. They can use the leaf very differently. For us, it's one of the most difficult leaves, I think, to work with, Connecticut broadleaf, in time, know-how, cost, all of it. And it's not getting any less than expensive with, rising costs.
You were the first person to educate me on this topic about how broadleaf is all broadleaf is stock cut.
Correct.
How much, again, this is just a learning opportunity for me and my audience, how much would it affect the quality of the leaf? Well, and when I say quality, also the flavor of the leaf, if in order to produce higher yields, they went away from stock cutting and just did primings?
Yeah, it's not necessarily the stock cutting that's doing the main amount of damage, right? It's, again, weather conditions.
Okay.
And then the nature of the leaf. This is a short, stocky plant. It's more similar to what a filler plant would be in Nicaragua. It's not typical of a wrapper plant. A wrapper plant is usually sometimes 8-9 feet tall, much thinner, much taller. Filler leaves, plants shorter. That's what Connecticut broadleaf is. Short, it's stocky, and then the leaves are very gigantic, some of them, depending on what seed type you're growing. And then they start to break because they're so big. And the tip of the leaf doesn't have sometimes a strong enough vein structure because it's so big to hold up, and you get a lot of breakage, where you're dealing with a lot of, different diseases and whatnot. If you shaded broadleaf and then primed it, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
It would, if you shaded, of course, it'd be much thinner. If you primed it, it could actually take on more body and more thickness.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. Because it starts, protecting itself, and kind of shifting, where, the stalk cutting part, you're getting a lot of the nutrients directly from the stalk still.
Well,
But
that could
you just don't. Yeah.
That would affect the manufacturing of it too, because like it's already well known that broadleaf is, the elasticity of broadleaf is already difficult to work with in general. So if you have thicker leaves, that would make it, well, again, I haven't manufactured cigars, Nick, so forgive my ignorance here. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's always been my understanding that the elasticity of broadleaf has been difficult to work with in the sense of, like, it doesn't stretch as much as other leaves because of how thick of a leaf it is in general. So if you prime it and it becomes thicker, that would.
Yeah, that depends on, what maybe some of the very upper primings of the broadleaf wouldn't be as elastic because it's so thick. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say broadleaf has a decent amount of elasticity
Oh,
because
okay.
it has, yeah, because it has, so much oil. Um, it's very leathery. There's a lot to the leaf. So I wouldn't say that it's not elastic. Maybe some of the very upper primings are not quite as elastic.
Gotcha.
But if you maintain it right, if you ferment it right, I mean that's what you're really trying to maintain, right? And
Hmm.
taking the time and doing it slow and steady and maintaining, the oils, the essential oils from the leaf. Um,
Hmm.
and this is what happens when you start taking it fast. I mean, you turn up the temperatures, you go too quick, you start losing. We say the grasa. I gotta take some water here so I can say it better. La grasa, the fat of the leaf.
Mm,
It's got a lot of that. The Cuban seed has a lot of that. That's why it's so hard to ferment.
gotcha.
The Havana seed in Connecticut it's got so much oil and elasticity, and that's what it takes time to ferment, and to get it to the right place while keeping the flavor.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm gonna lose you here, man. I'm gonna lose you here.
No, I'm good,
You look
man.
like you're selling.
Absolutely not, man. You
I
always
I
you
gotta
reel me in
do
all the time. What are you talking
I
about?
gotta do a hard stop at 12, Bear, because
Okay, you got it.
it's late over here,
You
man.
got
You're
it.
keeping me up on a Sunday.
You got it. So
What
let's
time is it over there?
it is 10:41. So let's move things
10:41. Oh, I'm only an hour.
yeah. So let's move things along here.
Is
And
Jay Davis still in the
of course,
the
yeah, J.O.
Broadleaf brothers keep buying a lot for blunts too? Yeah. Sorry.
Uh, no problem. Let's move things
I'm
along here.
a,
So our charity segment all week long, all month long, has been for
ooh,
Canines for Warriors. So
nice.
I launched this segment 3 years ago this month, and on my birthday, and so
Awesome.
we usually feature charity, and that's why I said we're going to tie this into your other latest project. So check out. I'm going to
Yes.
send a link in the chat. I'm going to also have it in the show notes. Canines for Warriors. It's a great organization, supports veterans and dogs. But you have a charity segment
Send that
component.
link so I'll definitely donate something.
Awesome. But you have a charity component too with this other latest project that you launched at PCA. And I mean, this past March, you received an incredible honor from the people of Ethiopia, and you were named given the rank of Knight Commander, which is the latest project from what what is coming from Foundation. So tell us a little bit about this.
Fair. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming to even receive such a title. It still kind of blows my mind. A great honor to receive. It was called the Star. It is called the Star of Honor of Ethiopia, which goes back to the 1800s. And I wanted to be sure to give back. And so I created a cigar called the Knight Commander. It's a 6 3/4 by 52, 12 count box. We did 700 boxes. This is going to be a yearly release every around this time. Probably going to do October, November. Um, and all of the sales on Foundation side goes directly to Ethiopian charity focus on education, scholarships, and entrepreneurship. So we're just getting ready to launch the site soon, probably in the next month or so.
Awesome.
And we're going to have, some really cool projects going on. So hopefully you'll be able to see them, right on the site, and see firsthand everything we're trying to do for students in Ethiopia. Education is a very important to the the Crown Council of Ethiopia and the last emperor of Ethiopia. He was actually known as the Emperor of Education. He built a lot of universities
Oh,
and
wow.
really promoted, educating, sending people abroad, people learning. So I'm hoping we
So
build some schools, provide some scholarships, and do some good works.
that's awesome. So
So
this
we're
will
we're
give
almost there. We're almost, yeah.
people will have
Go
the
ahead.
opportunity to donate to directly toward the organization, as well as obviously helping out the organization with the purchase of Knight Commander.
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct. Yeah. So all of the profits on my side go directly into the charity.
That's beautiful.
What I'm hoping, Bear, we weren't able to, have something planned for the store side, but I'm hoping to provide that pretty easy QR code to people. So if they want to donate, they can donate directly.
That's awesome. That'll be what a wonderful opportunity, and what a give back to the people of Ethiopia. You've long since honored them as part of, again, one of your many stories that you've done through your cigar branding, and then to I I mean you I mean it was not this wasn't just a private ceremony. This was a whole gala event that you were a part of, and it was, I mean, it was, like you said, it was very humbling and awe-inspiring, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty overwhelmed by it, Bear. I mean, I've been, you know, since I started smoking cigars, people that know, kind of, I fell in love with Ethiopian history. You talk about geeks,
Mm,
I'm a geek of Ethiopian history, and it kind of changed my world perspective. I was 18 and all I knew about Ethiopia was starvation because we are the world. We grew up in the we are the world time, mid 80s. Um, Live Aid, Live Aid, it was a good intention to raise money. There was massive famines that happened in the 80s after the communists took over in 74. It's not funny, but it was bad.
hmm
So in this process, the whole country was branded as, starvation. And then I started seeing how my grandparents knew about Haile Selassie, about
hmm,
the Emperor of Ethiopia, how this whole other generation during World War II honored Haile Selassie. He is the most decorated head of state in the world. So he received the most decorations. This kind of just shows how well received he was all over the world. But he was crowned in 1930. That's what the tabernacle box is, a picture of the coronation from November 2nd, 1930. This was the first time that Ethiopia was kind of brought into the world news because they would play images from the coronation at the beginning of movies. They used to do the newsreel before you
sure,
go to
of
the movie theater
course.
and see a movie. So this coronation was played at the movie theater, and because all of these different heads of state showed up to the coronation, and then 6 years later, Italy invades, and Selassie is the first one to address the League of Nations. So Italy invades. Selassie eliminates slavery as he becomes emperor. There was still slavery in Ethiopia, and he works for Ethiopia to be admitted into the League of Nations, which they were.
Mm,
And then Italy invades, and nobody was doing anything because the League basically said that, if anybody invades, this is, you signed this charter saying you wouldn't do this. And Selassie goes to the League of Nations and addresses them. And it's kind of a foreshadowing of World War II
hmm
because he ends the speech with saying, "Today it is us. What shall I tell my people? Today it is us. Tomorrow it's going to be you." So
So powerful.
he was one of the first symbols of fighting the fascists
Right.
and an Allied victory in World War II because they ended up driving out the Italians in 1941 with the help of the British.
Wow.
So there's this very old connection between, Britain and Ethiopia also.
And that
I'm kind of getting into the weeds here.
no, that brings in the Highclere Castle point too. Like again, it's all
Yeah,
interconnected. Like all the stories kind of interweave and stuff.
they
Um,
really are. Yeah. So Night Commander, it's a pricey stick. It's been aging for 18 months, Bear, in
oh wow.
Nicaragua.
Okay.
So I had these made 18 months ago, and they've been aging in cedar in my good friend Abdel Fernandez's humidor for the past 18 months.
And so that'll be launching hopefully within the month with the launch of the website where people can.
So we're starting to ship next week. People are
Oh,
already
okay.
starting to receive Night Commander, so you'll start seeing them more. I think in the next couple of days we're going to be making the announcement.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, we have just a couple more sponsored segments that will conclude our evening, Nick, and we can hopefully get you out right at right around your hard stop here. So appreciate so much the conversation. It's been fantastic as always, and we're excited about Matapa, which is available now in stores. Pegnataro and Pasquale shipping have shipped this week, so we should start to see them in stores, and then hopefully Night Commander will be coming in the next couple of weeks. You can try all of the newest releases from Foundation Cigar Company at your local brick and mortar, and if they don't have Foundation cigars, ask for them, and you can have some at your local brick and mortar. So,
We got we
so
got a we got a slight hold on opening new accounts.
okay, well, ask for it anyway, so that
But
you can get on the wait list.
get in the pipeline. Get in the pipeline.
There you go. So,
But
our
you
next,
you were saying Highclere. You were saying Highclere Castle.
yes, sir.
Oh, was that what you were going to say?
Well, I was just saying how like the British helped the Ethiopian
Yeah,
people expel the Italians,
yeah.
and then you have this storyline with Senator and everything. So,
And Senator is coming out. We're re-releasing in the next couple of weeks.
oh,
That's a
fantastic,
that's become a November release.
terrific. So, Night Commander will
There,
follow.
I tried to, yeah. Night Commander will ship yearly by November 2nd,
Okay.
and then Senator will usually probably follow in November because that's the anniversary of King Tut's discovery. Um,
Awesome.
so last year we did it as the 100-year anniversary. I had a lot of requests for the cigar again. So they twisted my arm. So we decided to do it also, every year, November, 500 box release every year.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite lines that you do. I overall, Nick, I
So
think it's
you've
probably
smoked it before.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
this is my last one from last year's batch, the one that I asked you about earlier.
Nice,
So looking forward
nice.
to the re-release. So our next sponsor segment is Everybody Eats, sponsored by Postani Cigars. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Postani Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Postania, everybody eats. So Nick, there's a series of questions that we asked with this one, but we'll keep it at one. So what is the best experience of eating with other people that you've ever had?
Wow. That's a great question. Best experience of eating that I've ever had. I mean,
With other people specifically.
with other people. I mean, definitely Thanksgivings with my grandparents, with Tony Pegg at his house. These were always good eating time. My grandmother would cook, so much food, amazing yearly cuisine that we would year two. But those are some of the happiest, memories and the ones that come up first.
Hmm.
Um, is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah. Was there a signature
Yeah.
disc in the Pegnataro household for Thanksgiving?
A signature dish. The manigot that we call it, the manigot. Manigot is what my grandmother would make. It's rolled pasta with ricotta cheese in the inside. That was one of her.
Mm,
That was that was one of her, yeah, specialties.
nice.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
and she
good
made a
spot.
mean broccoli casserole, and then she had like a meat and onions uh, kind of casserole that was out of this world.
Awesome.
And man, what else, man?
Go
Man, I
hit the spot.
I missed those Thanksgivings.
You could bring it back though. Just have to learn how to make it.
You know, my sister does, and my sister and my mother. My mother's incredible. She picked up a lot of the secrets.
There you go. Awesome.
But yeah, how about you? Eh?
Thanksgiving is a special holiday for me. I'm a Thanksgiving over. Um, I
Christmas
love Christmas, but
holiday?
I'm a Thanksgiving person over Christmas though, because I love the sharing of the meal aspect. I love to cook for people. There's nothing more satisfying than
I
putting a
mean,
dish in front of people that you've made. It's
I mean, I'll tell you one of my coolest eating experiences recently was last year. I got to go to Ethiopia for the first time, and traditional, you eat all out of the same plate, and they
mm,
use this bread that's called injera, and you don't eat with utensils. You use the bread to eat vegetable dishes, beef, lamb. There's goat sometimes, and it's all in the same. And
same
everyone
pot.
eats from the same, yeah, from the same dish. It's just one gigantic dish,
That's awesome.
and it's beautiful. You know, it's you eat from the same dish, then it's a sign that you will not deceive each other, that there's a bond and a friendship
Oh, wow.
there. And then after the roasting coffee comes out, so it's usually on a like on an iron, like on a skittle,
Hmm.
and it's roasting coffee beans, and they're smoking, and they'll bring it around to each person at the table, and you sort of use it to kind of, they call it smudging. You kind of put the smoke in your face
Mm.
and let it kind of wake you up. And before then, the coffee comes out. The coffee comes out with frankincense and myrrh usually.
Oh,
So, you know, coffee, it turns out, goes back to priests were the first to consume coffee so they can stay up at night and pray. This was when coffee was first consumed. They noticed their goats were eating these berry bushes, and that they would call them the laughing goats. And there's a very famous story. I forgot the priest's name, but in Ethiopia, it's the origins of coffee. And then they started sort of making, you know, taking the berries and then eventually the bean out. And so this is why it's always served with frankincense and myrrh in a traditional Ethiopian restaurant. It will always be served with frankincense and myrrh.
wow. That's
Yeah, it's
that's.
pretty amazing. It goes back a long way too.
I need to try this. This is
So
crazy. I've had Ethiopian the tradition you're talking about with the type of bread I've eaten,
yeah,
but I haven't done the coffee
injera.
thing. I haven't done the coffee thing.
Yeah,
That needs to happen. So,
yeah.
last two segments here, Nick. So the last couple of questions, and we'll let you go for the evening. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. But this next segment is brought to
My
you
pleasure,
by
man.
Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than a physical place; it can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So Nick, you've answered this question before, and if it's the same answer for you or something similar, but I guess let's take it. Let's since the last time we spoke was over a year ago, let's take it back in the last 12 months. When was a moment that you had with just a cigar? Like there weren't like this is such a communal thing, community thing. You're usually smoking with other people or other people around. But what was the last in the last year? What was a moment that it was just you and a cigar? What were you smoking, and what was that moment about?
Let's see. I was smoking one of the test blends of Matapa, and I was in a park bench. Um, yeah, but that was a while ago. Um, so it was one of the Matapa Maduros, and I had a Claro too. But you know, when I come back from Nicaragua, whenever I'm working on blends, I always end up taking them stateside, of course, and then letting them sit for a week, depending on where they're at, um, and then smoking them kind of by myself. Um, so I think it was then, and then smoking at my office. Yeah. Sometimes I like to have a cigar get in early before anybody shows up, light up a morning smoke, get my coffee in. Yeah. Get some music going,
Start the day off right.
set the meditation for the day.
Awesome.
Hopefully I'm not too stressed out or going crazy,
There you go. Well, Nick,
which
again,
happens, Bear.
one
It
final
happens.
thank you so much for tonight's evening. And again, like you said, it's late. The fact that you this is now your third appearance on this show, and you make time for me every Sunday night, and I know it's super late for you, and you work incredibly hard, and I know you're an early riser too, so it means more to me than you'll ever know, that you make time for me on Sunday evenings. So
Thanks,
thank you
man.
so much.
I always enjoy talking with you, man. It's nice to talk shop and just hang out and smoke and talk cigars, man.
Absolutely. So the feeling's mutual. So this last segment, of course, is our curveball segment, which is always brought to you by Dunbar Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter since the company's inception. Steve Sock has been knocking them out of the park. 8, count them up, 8 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. So, Nick, I want to
He's
take.
a beast.
He is.
He's a beast, that Saka.
Both you guys are. So, going back a little bit in your own personal history, you worked at the Vatican years ago, which is always a great part of your story. So this is a curveball segment, so this is a made up scenario. The Vatican calls, Nick. The Vatican calls and says, "Hey, we are hosting a dinner for 500 dignitaries, heads of state, religious figures," and says, "We want you, since you were working here one day, we want the Foundation Cigar Company to supply a cigar for everyone to smoke. They want you to bring one cigar, just one of your cigars for a 500 person dinner. What cigar out of the Foundation portfolio are you bringing to this dinner?"
Tabernacle Night Commander.
Okay.
Tabernacle Night Commander, hands down. It's a heavier blend maybe for some non-smokers, but because the age on it, Bear, it's more nuanced than the core line Tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's toned down a little bit. So I would choose that one.
It's a snap choice for you. I mean, any other than just the makeup of the blend, is there a
Okay.
reason why it's so easy for you to choose that one?
Yeah, because I think it's that it would be that, or it would be the Tabernacle Havana Seed Corona.
Okay.
The
Awesome.
Corona Havana Seed Tabernacle. The Corona and the Havana Seed.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes the Europeans like a little bit of that smaller ring gauge.
Mm-hmm.
Corona size is a nice size, but those Coronas, I think the Tabernacle is perfect. Haile Selassie had a relationship with the Pope, even after, or late 1800s, and they invaded kind of twice Italy. So even through all of that, there was always a relationship there between the Vatican and Ethiopia. That goes back thousands of years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a college in the Vatican. So, I didn't work right in the Vatican. I worked during the Jubilee, which was the year 2000. There was pilgrims coming from all over the world. And I started by helping pilgrims at different sites throughout Rome. And then eventually I worked for them for World Youth Month, which was that August. There was millions of youth coming into Rome, August 2000. So I was helping there and arrange logistics. It was wild. But there's a Vatican college in the Vatican. So that goes back to, I think it's the 1200s or 1400s.
Mm-hmm.
There was pilgrims that came up from Ethiopia to Rome seeking St. Peter and St. Peter's tomb. So they couldn't communicate with them, but they noticed crosses so that they knew that they were Christian. And then they actually granted them a church within Rome, but then also started this Vatican Ethiopic school on the Vatican grounds. So if you go into the Vatican, it's a very small place, but they do have an Ethiopian school there,
Nick,
which is fascinating.
it's so fascinating how your life's story, for one, it's one for the ages. It's so rich. You've lived such a life, and I mean, by no stretch of the imagination are you even even close to the end of it. You've had such an
I
interesting,
hope not, man.
incredible story, man. And it's amazing how you've been able to draw this. I mean, it's almost like a Venn diagram of Foundation Cigar Company, the lines you've created, your story, and how it's interwoven in so many sectors.
Yeah.
It's just great. We've done it a few times tonight, just by happenstance.
Yeah, and that's what the main impact was, Bear, when I learned about Ethiopia. I'm smoking cigars and I'm learning about Ethiopia. It made me see things as interconnected, because then I started seeing scientists were saying the first bones come from Ethiopia. Like literally, they were finding all the bones in the Rift Valley of Ethiopia. And then I was reading the Bible in university, not as a religious text, as an English class. And Genesis starts as the Garden of Eden,
Right.
describing it as Ethiopia, as one of there was four rivers: Tigris, Euphrates, Gihon, and Fihon. The Gihon flew through the land of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, here's science saying this. Why is a religious text saying this? And then eventually, when you look into it, we all stem from the same root and common origin. And that kind of shifted my kind of perspective. That's just how I see things through the lens, through my
Yeah.
lens, right? As interconnected. And when you look at it, at the end of the day, it is
Uh-huh.
somehow it's all intricately interconnected.
And this is what I meant earlier about I get almost more excited about the story than I do about the cigar, because I mean I know the cigar is going to be incredible because of your
Yeah.
passion and how diligent you are in that process too. But I mean, all of it's diligence, all of it's just focus and intent and purpose. And we
I'm
talked about this
starting
earlier.
to get into now is more the history of smoking. Where
Mm.
did this start? Where did smoking begin? When did
Uh,
this
yeah,
take
you
a
got it.
crack at it?
Well, I mean, the earliest
I'm listening
things
to
of,
you.
yeah, the
Can we get
earliest
up for
things
a
of,
second? I'm
yeah,
listening.
absolutely. The earliest
Yeah.
things of smoking,
Yeah.
or history of smoking that I know is about, with indigenous populations. You obviously hear about, the whole tradition of peace pipe here in America with Native Americans, the
Right.
Cohiba, the Behike in the Caribbean,
Yep.
obviously, various,
Olmec.
very much the start of the story, Olmec, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I, I'm assuming here in the Americas is where we see that tradition start. Did it start somewhere else?
So this is what I originally kind of thought also, but then I'm sort of learning, and there's a lot I have to investigate about, but you also had the Mesopotamia, Babylonians, in Indian, Egyptian, actually smoking um, hashish potentially,
Oh,
but that
okay.
it evolving out of shamanistic or religious ceremonies of incense burning.
Mm,
So incense burning eventually would also become in a lot of the shamanic rituals is smudging ceremonies. Smudging is when you actually take the smoke and you're just sort of blowing it onto you, like protecting and purifying, your energy field, and having like the great spirit bless you. So they think through some of these rituals, maybe of so much smoke, you start to see yourself exhaling the incense. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So if you're in a religious ceremony and you're like packed in there and they're burning, you know, things, it's gonna be like a clam bake.
Yeah.
You're gonna be bringing it in.
Yeah.
Which I never thought about because I've always associated with tobacco and this side of the world. But I think smoking could go back, and I have to check into like hookahs, but pipe smoking was happening here. Not here. I mean, that part of the world also,
Wow. Yeah.
which
That's
is interesting.
it is very interesting. Well, Nick, again, we just want to go ahead and send off tonight's evening. We really appreciate all your time as always. Again, I've learned so much tonight. So does my audience, and you never cease to amaze me on that front, and you never disappoint either. And it's always just a pleasure speaking with you. I've always felt a kinship with you, our appreciation for history, beards, hats, cigars. It's all, we have a lot in common, and
Same here, man. Same here. That's
it's
why I always like coming on and talking shop with you.
I appreciate it very much. So, to our audience, thanks for tuning in as always, and always staying up late with us. We do appreciate all those likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming on our Facebook Live. We have our Facebook Live broadcast every Sunday night starting at 9:30 Central. You can tune in then for a calendar of upcoming events. Pay attention to our Facebook page, Los Fumar. Hit the like button and you'll find out more every single week. If you are a YouTube subscriber, go to our YouTube channel, Los Fumar. Hit the like button as well, subscribe button rather, and you can tune into all of our videos on YouTube, as well as if you're listening to us on podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio. Be sure you hit the download, subscribe, and review buttons as well. If you are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit the word unsubscribe, but don't forget to hit resubscribe because that actually helps my numbers, believe it or not, and allows me to get great guests like Nick whenever I want. So for everyone out there, thank you so much for this incredible opportunity. We just want to thank our audience, thank Nick, and this has been another amazing take live from the Alec Bradley studio of Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis. As always, this was our 269th take. Next month, we celebrate 6 years of Los Fumar takes. He's Nick Melillo of Foundation Cigar Company, everybody. And guess what? We'll see you next time.
Peace.